gentlemen, welcome to the auction for AVCon 2015! We would like to thank you all so much for being patient. We still have people trickling in, so everyone gets to sit down. Thanks again. Let's get straight underway. My name is Dent. I will be your auctioneer this evening. We have the lovely Shadow from Treasury down here. We also have Josh running around with the microphone. And we have our lovely mascots, Avi and Switch, who'll be handing out the items over here. Come on and wave to the nice people. So, before we get going, a few ground rules. Rule number 1. Bids go up in increments of $5. None of this 22, 23, 24, that takes forever. This is a nice place. We don't want to be here till midnight tonight. Let's keep it flowing. Rule number 2. No false bids. False bids are bad. If you make a false bid, people will let the air out of your tires and smash in your front windshield. Don't false bid. If you bid, commit. Rule number 3, once you've made a purchase, please come down to our lovely treasury down here. We accept both cash and card. We do not accept IOUs. After you've made a payment, please make your way to the side of the stage over here, where AV and Switch will deliver your item. And one last rule before we get this auction going. Do you want me to put the hammer down? Do you want me to put the hammer down? All sales are final. Once the hammer goes down, bidding stops. Okay, that's all the rules. Let's start this. I'm pumped. First up, we have 4 decks of Magic the Gathering Commander cards. They are extra large and very well suited to multiplayer. Okay, so what have we got here? We've got Guided by Nature, Peer Through Time, Built from scratch and forged in stone. Each of these are 100 card decks. Also foil. Did I mention 130? These are all selling individually. Okay, so we'll start the bidding for forged in stone at $50. 50. 130. Do we hear 140? Going once. Going twice. Please stand up, Mr. 130. Going once. Going twice. Sold. Taxi. Next up, we've got the Built from Scratch deck. Starting price, $50. Do we hear 50? 50, 60, 70. Do we hear 80? Do we hear 80? Do we hear 75? Going once, going twice. Sold for 70. Next up we have Guided by Nature. Do we hear 50? 50. Do we hear 60? Do we hear 55? Going once. Going twice. Sold for 50. And the last, Magic the Gathering Commander, also my favorite, Peer Through Time. Do we hear 50? 50. Do we hear 60? Going once. 55? Wave at me. Do we hear 60? Going once. Going twice. Sold for 55. Please make your way down the front. What do we have next? Next up, we have a Mass Effect original, limited print, signed by our wonderful guest, Jennifer Hale. Who got along to see Jennifer this weekend? Come on, more of you did, surely. Yay. Okay. We have this Mass Effect 3 print, selling for $100, signed by Jennifer Hale. Do we hear 100? Who said 250? You don't know how to haggle. Do we hear 100? We heard 250. We heard someone who can't haggle. Going once. Going twice. Who said 250? Please stand up and wave at me. Are we being serious? Oh, okay. We're going to call that one not sold? 100? Who said 100? Wave at me. Okay, going once. 110. Do we hear 120? 120. Do we hear 130? Sitting on 120. Going once. Going twice. 130. Do we hear 140? Come on. Do we hear 140? What's up? Mr. Convener Will has something to say to you all.
Hey guys, this is a super rare limited edition piece. There were only 500 ever created, and the person who did this wonderful concept art has signed it down in the corner as well. So guys, it's a really rare opportunity for you.
And surely we have more Mass Effect fans in the audience than this. Going once. 140, do we hear 150? Going once. 150, do we hear 160? Going once. Going twice. Sold for 150. Next up, we have an AVCon convention booklet, signed by all three of our guests, Jennifer Hale, Yahya Hahn, and Eve Beauregard. Yeah. This guy wants it. Starting price. It's signed, the front cover is signed, so you know it's signed as soon as you look at it. It's a dead giveaway. Starting price is $15. 60, do we hear 65? Do we hear 65? Who said 65? That's 25 is not 65. I have an English degree and my maths is this good. Going once. Going twice. I'll let you say it, come on. Oh, you didn't. You didn't. Are you going to take this line down?
No, 70.
75, do we hear 80? Do we hear 80? 75, do we hear 80? Do we hear 85? Do we hear $85? 100? Yeah! Do we hear 105? Going once. Going twice. Now I'll let you say it. Sold! Sold! For $100. Okay. Next up, who here checked out the Indie Games Room this weekend? I love how you followed the microphone. That was amazing. Okay. So, we have the Indie Games Room banner, signed by all our indie game developers. Stand up, please. I don't want to lose you. Okay. Starting bid is 75. Do we hear 80? 80. Do we hear 85? 85. Do we hear 90? Sitting on $85. 100. Do we hear 105? You're sitting down. That usually means you don't want to bid anymore. Sitting on $100 over here. Wave at me. Who said 100? What's up? Do we hear 105? Going once. Going twice. 105. Do we hear 110? 120. Do we hear 125? 125. Do we hear 130? 130. Do we hear 140? Or 135? Going once. Going twice. Sold for 130. Next up, we've got my personal favorite. We've got all the pass packs. So every kind of pass there is for AVCon, but each of these is signed by one guest. So we'll start off with the pass pack signed by Eve Beauregard. Who's Ori's panel today? Yeah, she was really, really awesome. Yes! Okay, do we hear $10? 20, do we hear 25? 25, do we hear 30? 30, do we hear 35? 55, do we hear 60? 60, do we hear 65? Going once. 65, who said that? Wave at me. Do we hear 70? It's all the passes. Only the guest pass is signed, but it does include all the passes. 70, do we hear 75? 75, do we hear 80? You must be strong as a coursing river. With all the strength of a great typhoon. Do we hear 80? Going once. Going twice. 85. That was the best timing ever. Do we hear 90? 90, do we hear 95? 100. Stand up and wave at me. Do we hear 105? Going once. Going twice. Sold for 100. It's the... Yeah, Beauregard. So, which one is Beauregard?
This one's Jen.
That's Jen?
This is all.
This is Eve. This is Eve. We'll just leave Eve down here. Actually, no. You hang on to Eve. Okay. Next up, we have the same thing, but the guest pass this time is signed by Yaya Han. $10. Okay. What was that? Sorry. 15. Do we? 20. Do we hear 25? 50. Sorry, we have 50. 50. Is that how you do 50? That's awesome. Do we have 55? 70. Do we come with 75? Come with? Do we hear 75? Going on. 75. Do we hear 80? Going once. Going twice. Who saw Yaya Han this weekend? Yeah. And we're sitting on 75. But do we hear 80 from any of our other fans? Going once. Going twice. Sold for 75. Next up, we have the pass back, which is signed by Jennifer Hale, who has the Guinness World Record. Okay, 50. I'll remember you. 75. Do we hear 80? Do we hear 80? We're sitting on 75. Oh, the world record. Oh, yeah, she's got the Guinness World Record for most voice actress roles ever so far. Hopefully she defends that until she dies. Pardon me? In gaming. Okay, in gaming, not ever. That's still a massive achievement. We're on 75. Do we hear 80? Who said 80? Do we hear 80? Who said 75? Wave at me. Sup? Okay, we're on 75. Going once. 80. Do we hear 85? 100. Do we hear 105? Going once. Going twice. Pardon? Okay, sold. Last pass pack, and this is the Big Daddy. This one is signed by all three of our guests. So let's just remember, it comes with every AVCon pass, and the guest pass is signed by all three of our guests, Eve Beauregard, Yaya Han, and Jennifer Hale. 100, do we hear 110? Do we hear 120? Do we hear 120? 140? 140. Do we hear 150? We're sitting on 140. Do we hear 150? Sitting on 140. Do we hear 150? Come on. All three guests. It's going once. 150. Do we hear 160? Do we hear 160? Going once. That better not have been a false bid. 160. Do we hear 170? Going once. Going twice. 170. Do we hear 180? 180. You hear 190. You thinking about it? 200. 210? 210. Do we hear 220? You've come too far to back out now. Do we hear 220? 220, do we hear 230? Going once. 230, do we hear 240? You're thinking about it. Going once. 240? 240? Do we hear 250? Going once. Going twice. 240? Sold! Who here likes hoodies? Who here likes pink hoodies? Who here likes cosplayers? And who here is an extra small? All the most high-pitched people are extra smalls. We have an extra small AVCon pink hoodie, the last one at the convention, signed by Eve Beauregard and Yahya Han, and it could be yours for $60. Do we hear 60? Do we hear 70? It's a very big extra small. Can you try it on? You can marvel at it. Oh, can I try it on? Okay. Hold that for a second.
Who says he's dashing?
I feel like Little Mac. But getting back down to business, we hear 60, do we hear 70? If Sparks buy it, then definitely. Going once, going twice, sold for 60. Someone said 65. 80? You serious? It's still going. No, no. The buyer is still bidding. It's at 80. Going once. 85, do we hear 90? 100? Do we hear 105? Going once, going twice. Sold again to Sparks. You just paid an extra $40 for it. Okay, I will sell my tie. Okay, next up we've got a Dragon Age 2 limited print of Blightlands. Who here is a Dragon Age fan? This corner is a Dragon Age fan. This looks awesome. By Steve Kilt. It's 1 of 500 and it is signed by him as well. That is at least $3.50. That is at least $3.50. Starting price. Starting price is $100. 100. Do we hear 150? 110, sorry. I forgot how to math. Going once. Going twice. 110. Do we hear 120? Do we hear 120? 120. Do we hear 130? Going once. 130. Do we hear 140? 140. Do we hear 150? Going once. Going twice. 150. Do we hear 160? Anyone can take it now. Just do it. Going once. Going twice. Sold for 150. Okay. We've got 3 more items. Oh, no. There's a third one coming up. Next up, we have a full set of badges from the Maids Cafe. Who went to the Maids Cafe this weekend? How kawaii was it? Yes, whoever said that, you're right. Okay, so we got a full set of signed badges from the Maids Cafe, and it's $10. 15, do we hear 20? Do we hear 30? Do we hear 40? Do we hear 50? Do we hear 60? 60? Do we hear 70? Do we hear 70? Pardon? We're sitting on 60 over here. Do we have 70? Oh, yes. Yes, you get the bowl. And it's a really nice bowl as well. It's ceramic. It's not plastic. This is the real deal. We're on 60. Do we have 70? 70, wave at me. Who said 70? 70, do we hear 80? I'm not going to dignify that with a response.
Saves you yelling.
Going once. Going twice. 80? Do we hear 90? Going once. Going twice.
90.
90?
Oh, that was very loud. That was awfully loud. Didn't expect that to be so loud. Just destroying everyone's eardrums.
It is the spirit of the Adelaide Convention Centre. He has come again. This moment was foretold many moons ago. We have 90. Do we hear 95? 95. Do we hear 100? Going once, going twice. We're on 95. And it's sold for $95. Next up, our second last item. We have an A1 original piece of artwork by Lena Lamb, one of our fan traders. And it is signed by, it has been signed by her as well. This is the work of 1,000 fan fictions. It would look amazing framed in your kitchen. And it could be yours for $50. 50, do we hear 60? 60, do we hear 70? 70, do we hear 80? 80, do we hear 90? Mate, that ain't worth nothing. Shots fired. Pew, pew. I didn't hear that, so I'm going to keep on going. So we're sitting on 90. Do we hear 100? No, we can't lower that. Do you know how an auction works? All right, who said 90? Please stand up and wave at me. Do we hear 100? Going once. Going twice. 100. Do we hear 110? Do we hear a monetary value, not the value of a human life? Going once. We're on 100. Going once. Going twice. Sold. And we come to the final item. We have got one more.
So we're going to offer a handshake from 3 different convention organizers.
Okay.
Starting bid $1.
Yeah, I will. Okay, so what we have is something that you will likely never get at an auction again. It is the opportunity to shake hands with 3 conveners. We have Moen from AVCon in Canberra. We have Sparks from AVCon in Tasmania. And we have Will from something called AVCon in some place called Adelaide. I don't know.
Well, Den says handshake, but let's see how high the voting goes.
Yeah! Maybe I'll shake with both hands.
Can I please get in? Oh my. Thank you.
Starting $1.
Starting at $1, do we hear $1? Do we hear 10? Do we hear 15? Do we hear 20? Do we hear 25? Do we hear 30? Who said 30? Wave at me. Who said 30? Do we hear 35? 35, do we hear 40? 40, do we hear 45? Sitting on 40, do we hear 45? No, string is not money. We're sitting on 40, do we hear 45? Going once. Going twice. 45, someone actually gave me a serious answer. Wave at me, who said that? Okay, 45, do we hear 50? Going once. Going twice. 50, if you can hug everyone on stage, is the deal? So you get 6 hugs. Okay. For 70, they'll do it. 60? 60, going once, going twice. 65, 70, do we hear 75? 75, do we hear 80? We're on 75, do we hear 80? Do we hear 90? Wave at me, do we hear 90? We're on 90, do we hear 100? Going once. Going twice. 95, do you hear 100? Going once. Going twice. Sold for 95. Come on up. Hold on a second. Pay first. You'll pay me? Okay. 95. All right, you pay me, I'll take down the treasurer. We've got the treasurer on stage. Treasurer Deputy, who has brought the FBOS machine. This is some serious organization. Dude is putting his money where his mouth is. Yeah! You do the honors.
Thank you so much.
What was your name?
Troy.
Round of applause for Troy! So now we're going, I'll let you introduce in a second. So now we're going to sell a companion I've had for many years now. It's a very dear friend. It's this swirly tie from Magnolia Clothing, as it is pure silk. Moen. Moen would like to say a few words about it.
So I know everyone's had an awesome time today. Everything has been great, but there's always that one terrible thing that slips in. We, not just as Adelaide, but as an entire national community, plead with you to take this abomination away with you. And Mr. Marcus, you've been wearing this all weekend?
I've been wearing it all weekend, but I've been wearing it all weekend while I've been at AVCon, yes. If I wore a tie in my sleep, that'd be dangerous.
So if you love the intriguing scent of AVCon, Marcus, and Awful, this is the lot for you. All right, I think we're gonna go. What's a good starting price for this?
I paid 70 for this tie, so we'll start it at 70. Okay, we'll start at $10. Do we hear 15? Do we hear 20? Do we hear 25? Do we hear 30? Do we hear 50? We're on 40. Do we hear 50? 45. Do we hear 50? 50. Do we hear 60? Do we hear 55? 55. Do we hear 60? 60. Wave at me. Do we hear 65? Yeah. 70. Do we hear 75? Going once. 75? 90. $90. Do we hear 100? I paid about 70 bucks for it, and we're sitting on 90. Going once. Money? The money would go straight back to AVCon. It's an AVCon auction. 100. Do we hear 105? 110. Do we hear 120? What color specifically? Well, it's chocolate, maroon, and lilac. So we're on 120. Do we hear 125? No. We're sitting on 120. Do we hear 125? 125? Stand up, wave at me. All right, we're on 125. Do you hear 130? Going once. We're on 125. Going once. Going twice. 130. Do we hear 140? We're on 130. Do we hear 135? Going once. Going twice. Who said 130? Wave at me. 150. 150. Okay. Going once. Going twice. The last item of the AVCon auction for 2015 has been sold. 150. I'm gonna have to get me a new tie. Those are all the articles of my clothing I'm selling tonight. Can we have one last massive round of applause for AV and Switch? And for our Deputy Treasurer, Shadow. And for our events coordinator and our runner, Mr. Joshua Munro. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the AVCon Auction of 2015. Thank you all for coming along and making such an awesome night. Stick around for the closing ceremony. It's going to get underway very soon. Till then, Den out.